Okay, so welcome everybody. Welcome our viewers on Torah Anytime throughout the world. So happy to have you. I'm not sure anybody heard, but I got a call from the president. No, I didn't get a call from the president, but I did hear breaking news from the White House that yet another Muslim terrorist was eradicated this evening. If I'm not mistaken, it was this evening. It was the leader of Al-Qaeda in Yemen. Amen. He's a leader of the global, worldwide Al-Qaeda movement. He's been in Yemen, and he's been planning attacks. It's a big fish, it's a big catch, and Baruch Hashem, an enemy, a very evil person, was eliminated, was annihilated. So it's something to be grateful for. But it goes much deeper than that, because you'll notice that there's a pattern here. Our president, Donald Trump, may Hashem bless him, he has a record of eliminating not one, but several terrorists, which is phenomenal, because there's a nevuah that says that in the era of Mashiach, right before Mashiach comes, the Yishmaelim that are not peace-loving, and I'm speaking a little euphemistically, but the Yishmaelim that are warmongers and that seek the destruction and the abuse of the Jewish people will be destroyed. As a matter of fact, it says that there will be Nesiim. There will be leaders of the Arab world that are called Nesiim, that are called princes. It's a title. Doesn't mean that they will necessarily be princes. And Chazal tells, the rabbis say that the word Nesiim, which means princes, is spelled deficient in the Torah. It's spelled without a yud. Why is it spelled without a yud? Because Nesiim can mean princes, but without a yud, what does it mean? It means clouds. And these leaders of the Ishmaelim that will seek to impose the radical and fanatical Islamic principles upon the world and seek to obliterate peace-loving people and civilized people, they will be Nesiim, they will disappear, they will dissipate and vanish like the Nesiim, like clouds. And this will all happen before the coming of Mashiach in the Messianic era, in Messianic times. And who will do it? It seems it will be done by the person who will facilitate the arrival of Mashiach. Not the Mashiach himself necessarily, but the person who will facilitate the arrival of the Mashiach. Edom against Ishmael. And you see that the ruler of Edom, which Trump is the ruler of Edom, he is almost single-handedly, obviously he's not in the trenches, he's not on the front lines, but he's directing, it's under his auspices, it's under his direction, it's under his mission statement. This is one of his biggest, I think, obsessions, and something that he speaks about constantly, about radical Islam, and about getting rid of hateful and evil people. And you see it happening mamish before our eyes. So we see nisim unfolding, miracles unfolding before our eyes. As I've said many times, we're not living in ordinary times. We're living in extraordinary times. We're not living in normal times. We're living in abnormal times. We're living in very special times. And special times require special people. That means that if the times are extraordinary, the people living in the generation are extraordinary. Never look at yourself in the mirror again and think of yourself as plain, or think of yourself as just ordinary. If you're living in an extraordinary generation, it speaks volumes about the people who are living in that generation. It means that there's something very, very special about you. When you wake up in the morning, you say, I am a man on a mission. I'm a woman on a mission. I'm here to accomplish. God created me in His image. God created me holy. God created me as a Jew. That means that I have a very, very special, significant task at hand. I have to uplift and elevate this world, and I have to be there to make sure to bring Mashiach. So that's why the Torah, this week's parsha, starts off. And it says, like this, Vayhi Beshalach Paro Esa'am. Paro lets the Jews out. He sends them out. He liberates them from the tyranny, from the enslavement, from the oppression. V'lanacham Elokim derech eretz Pelishtim. God says, I am not going to conduct them, I am not going to lead them the easy route. The easy route, geographically, is that they should go right by where the Philistines, and they have an almost immediate entry into the land of Israel. That's where they were supposed to go. They're supposed to go from the Exodus, from Egypt, into the land of Israel. Ki karovhu. That route, that's close. Karovhu. It's very, very close by. What does this mean? Let's think about this. Okay, and we're going to stop the munching now because it's now Torah time, not longer munching time, okay? Okay, so I'm going to concentrate on the Torah and concentrate less on the munching.
Well, if they were destined to be in the desert for 40 years, I guess it doesn't make a difference if they go a short route.
No, they weren't. Who said they were? Who said they were destined? They're supposed to go to Israel. They're supposed to go to Israel. No, they're supposed to go to Israel. They're supposed to go to Israel. They're supposed to eat falafel in Jaffa. They're supposed to come on. They're supposed to chew. They're supposed to chew sunflower seeds in Tel Aviv. You know.
He didn't want him to go back to Egypt.
So that's what the pasuk says. Ki Amar Elokim, because God says, Pen Yinachem Ma'am. Maybe the nation will have regret. Yinachem means that maybe they'll feel bad. They'll have regret. Barosim Mechama, because the Philistines may attack them. V'shavah Mitzrayim, and they'll go back to Egypt. They'll be chicken. They'll be vulnerable. They'll be fragile, and they'll say, if they go the easy route, they'll confront these marauders, they'll confront these combatants, these enemies, and right away they'll say, they'll retreat. They'll surrender. And the Medrash says actually that there were Jews from this tribe of Ephraim that tried to preempt the exile, the exodus. And they were the Bnei Ephraim, the children of Ephraim. They went earlier than they were supposed to. And that's why there's also big criticism on those that went to Israel before the Mashiach came. Many say that it was inappropriate. They're not allowed to force the Gula. You're not allowed to force the redemption. And therefore there's a criticism a lot on the Zionists that went to Israel. Others say that that's gibberish. And that is basically, that itself is just nonsense, sheer nonsense. Because especially after the Holocaust, when you had 1 out of every 3 Jews totally annihilated, then obviously we have to do something to protect ourselves. We have to have our own land. But those that said that's similar to the Jews that forced the redemption in the time of Egypt, and they were killed by the Philistines, much later on, hundreds and hundreds of years later, they were resurrected. Their bodies were resurrected. Their bones, their corpses, the cadavers turned into bones, and they were resurrected by Yecheskel, by Ezekiel the prophet. Very interesting. But let's examine the verse carefully. Yeah? Let's see what it says. Lo nacham Elokim derech eretz Pelishtim ki karovhu. God said, listen, I could take these people and I could give them the easy way out. I could send them directly to Israel, the shortest route possible, using the GPS, using Google Maps, using Waze. Waze will even tell them about any traffic alerts, I mean, there's no... By the way, use Waze very, very, very judiciously and carefully. I've used Waze several times, and it took me to the most far-flung places. It doesn't identify new streets or old streets. I'm telling you, there was one time when I was in the most dangerous neighborhood because of, one of these GPS programs, and I was scared for my life. You have to be very, very, very careful. So use it with caution. And use it with seichel. Use it with intelligence. Don't just use it blindly. There was a person that used Waze blindly, or one of these systems. I don't want to be sued by Waze now for any Waze engineers, or manufacturers, is listening to me. But there's a person that used one of the GPS systems. We're not going to say Waze, and he went right into the water. He said, go straight, It's interesting because you could use all different types of voices for ways. So they had, the voice that says, go straight, proceed straight, whatever it is, and the person went straight. And little did they realize that there was no barricade, there was no fence, and they drove right into the water, and they almost drowned to death, So you have to be careful. Obviously, the Waze didn't identify that there was water over there, for some reason, okay? So you have to be careful. So, why couldn't Hashem just, one second, send them the easy way and disarm the Philistines, disarm them, render them totally immobilized, whatever, use any device God wants. God has everything at his disposal, right?
To prepare the nation for leaving the land, being in charge of the land. They need time to prepare.
To prepare what?
To prepare their Kabbalah, the Torah.
Okay. True. Very good. Excellent point. So let them prepare in Israel. Go ahead and put them in.
When they're in Israel, God leaves them, meaning He puts them in charge of bringing and sustaining their own life force.
But that was the plan afterwards. But that was
We just came out of 400 years of slavery and were brainwashed.
Excellent. Okay, good. Okay, so they needed to be de-brainwashed, right? They needed to equilibrate. They needed to be civilized, right? They were, come, Josh, come over here. Come right here. Get a VIP seat. Do we have any sushi left?
Yeah.
Okay, so pass the man some sushi. He came all the way from Zimbabwe. No. Let's go. Okay. They had no idea. They had no independent identity. A slave, basically, is like cattle. Right? They had to become human again, right? So they needed a process. They needed to evolve as a people, as a nation. They needed to become civilized, right? That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. Listen to this. Listen carefully to this. The Sfas Emes says something utterly amazing. Ready? God purposely, intentionally takes them on a circuitous, tortuous route. Ki karavhu says the Kol Simcha. That's Reb Simcha Bunim of Pshischa. Ki karavhu is not referring to the route, to the proximity of the location, of the vicinity. Kikaravim it refers to the nation Israel, to the Jewish people. Because he loved them, because they were close, he says, I'm not going to treat them like anybody else. They are going to go on this is how, if I'm not mistaken, this is how the Sfas Emes calls it. A derech shelo derech. A path, a route, that's not a route. What does it mean a route that's not a route? What does it mean to be in a circuitous, tortuous route? It means that he was forging a path for them for the future. Telling them, you Jewish people, you are the blueprint. You are the patriarchs. You are the ancestors. You are the antecedents. You are the archetypes for all Jewish generations to the future. And now I'm planting the seeds for the future. The Jewish people will never have it easy. As long as they are Jews, and until Mashiach comes, they will always have travails. They will always have a derech shelo derech, where they think they made it, and then something happens. Because they are special. And special people have special privileges, but have special higher moral obligation and moral imperative. And therefore, they will not have the typical conventional route. This will always be something that will be different. God did not guide them or conduct their path in the normal route, in the normal way, because it will never be normal for the Jews. Because the Jews will always be there for a reason. Because the Jews are close to God. And God expects more from them. God demands more from them. And as great as it is to be a Jew, there's a hardship associated with it. Because it means that if you're the Prince of God, people have to emulate you. You're the role model. People have to look up to you. And you have to be special. You have to act special. So that means that throughout our lives as Jews, nothing may come easy. There may always be a challenge. And this is how it was set. This is our first path in life. This is our first journey in life as a people, as a nation, of the Yetzias Mitzrayim, of the exile to the Exodus, and God was making the blueprint that things may not be the way you think they should be. They may be a little more complicated. They may be a little more arduous. They may be a little more challenging, but it's all for a reason. That's the lesson of Sfas Emes. What an amazing lesson. Now let's go further. Torah says, Vayasev Elohim es ha'am derech hamidbar. God turns the people towards the way of the wilderness. Remember, a wilderness is desolate. It's barren. A wilderness is bereft of any amenities, provisions. It's a hard life there. It's a hard life. God still had intention, though. He still had a motivation to let them go to Israel very, very soon. The Jews messed up in the desert. And that's why they had to spend 40 years. The initial intent of God was to let them 50 days in the desert, as Josh said, to prepare, to get ready, to become the chosen people, to become the chosen nation. After those 50 days, to get the Torah, onto Jerusalem, onto Israel. That should have happened, perhaps. V'chamushim olu b'nei Yisrael meretz Yisrael. And they went, chamushim, they ascended from Egypt. What does the word chamushim mean? Very, very difficult word to translate. Extremely hard word to translate, but there's so many lessons. Now we know that the Torah has different facets and different dimensions. There's pshat, remesh, drush, and sod. There's a simple, superficial understanding. There's the encoded, encrypted meaning. There's drush, which is a little more homiletical, more of extrapolation perhaps. And then there's sod, which is esoteric, which is a very, very sublime meaning. All different types of layers. What does chamusha mean? So if you look in Unclus the convert, the Roman convert, Unclus, the great tzaddik, the righteous man, he says, umizorzin. That's how he translates it, mizorzin. Now what does mizorzin mean? Okay? Let's look at Rashi. Let's see how Rashi translates it. Says Rashi, v'chamushim, ein chamushim ela mizuyanim. You know what chamushim means? It means mizuyanim. It means that they were armed. The Second Amendment, here we are, right? Anybody that heard the State of the Union address, Trump was talking about faith and religion, and then he suddenly says, the Second Amendment is something that we will always hold dear. Now, by the way, a lot of people don't, unfortunately, one of the shooting victims from the Parkland massacre in Florida, in the high school there, so one of the girl's fathers, one of the victims' fathers was at the State of the Union, and she wasn't invited by Trump. I'm sorry, he wasn't invited by Trump. He was invited by Pelosi, actually, and he's against the right to bear arms. He's against the Second Amendment. And when he heard Trump say that, he actually protested. He caused a ruckus, and he had to be escorted out. And he later apologized that his emotions got the best of him. Now, God forbid to judge somebody, that lost a child, chas v'shalom, a million times. It's a terrible, terrible predicament and a terrible tragedy to suffer. But the fact is that many people do say that one of the first things the Nazis did to the Jewish people is that they took away their right to bear any arms. And they disarmed them. And that's why when the German police came and they rounded up, and everybody says, why did the Jews go like sheep to the slaughter? Why didn't they protect themselves? Why didn't they defend themselses? When the Jewish people are not able to be armed and they have an army, the Third Reich was an army, and the SS, and they had, the SS had many different divisions, and they're coming with rifles and pistols and all types of artillery and armaments. What do you expect the Jews to do? The Jews are totally susceptible. There's no way for them to defend themselves. So many Jews are in favor of the Second Amendment. They say because you never know, God forbid, when the police could turn into a police state. And when they could actually turn insidious and evil, and then how are we supposed to ever defend or protect ourselves? And then, of course, the other argument is that, and this comes actually from the Ramban, from Nachmanides, is that guns don't kill people, people kill people. A gun is just an object. A gun doesn't have a mind. A gun doesn't have the wherewithal to ever, a gun is inanimate. A person has the cognizance and the faculties to use a gun either for good or bad. So there's a lot of arguments about that. We're not going to discuss, the Jewish view about gun control, but the Second Amendment, it seems that the Jewish people, from our very get-go, from our very start, according to Rashi, he quotes in Mechilta as Mizyanim, that they were armed. Now, it's interesting because the Ramban says, Nachmanides says on this, he also says that when the Jewish people left Egypt, they went with arms, they went with weapons, and he says that lest, even though Hashem didn't send them through the Pelishtim, that they were afraid perhaps in the desert that maybe some Bedouins would come after them and they would have to defend themselves. Interesting thing is that Rabbeinu Bechaya says, what do you mean? These are the Jewish people. They're immune. Hashem is with them. Who can hurt them? So Rabbeinu Bechaya says that this is a raya that a Jew, even if he has a miracle that accompanies him, a Jew always has to ein somchal nes. You shouldn't rely strictly upon a nes. You always have to do things also al pi teva, upon nature, and do your hishtalus and make basic effort. That's Rabbeinu Bechaya. Other Mefarshim say something astounding. The Rishonim say, listen to what the Rishonim say, that the Jewish people left with weapons not because they would ever need those weapons. They have Hashem. So why do they need weapons? They have the Ananei covered, as Alan said, right? The heavenly clouds of glory. They don't need weapons. So the Rishonim say they left to show victory. How do you show victory? With your weapons raised high. In other words, it was just a display of pomp and ceremony, festivity, that they're gloating sort of against the Egyptians, but not that they would ever have to use the weapons. Which is very interesting because the Chose of Lublin, how many people are called a Chose? Chose means sort of like a seer, S-E-E-R, almost like a prophet, the Chose of Lublin. The great Lubliner, Hasidic Rebbe, he was so great that he was called the Chose of Lublin. He says something amazing. He says, B'charbi u'b'kashti, that the Goyim, what are their weapons? What do they have to utilize in order to fight a war? They need the swords, they need the bow and arrows, they need the conventional armaments and artillery. He says, but the Jew, Hakol kol Yaakov v'yadai midei Esav. The Esav, they need a sword, they need a spear, they need a M16, they need the Nimchucks. A Jew, Kol Yaakov, all we need is our voice. Vanitzach, we cry out to Hashem. We have a special, unique relationship with Hashem, that Hashem ensconces us. He makes us in a bubble where we have nothing, we're impervious. We don't have to worry about any harm, chas v'shalom. So says the Chayzeh, what does it mean that they were mizuyanin? That they were equipped? They weren't equipped with physical weapons. They were equipped with the weapon of the Jew. And what's the weapon of the Jew? Torah learning, davening. We're spiritual. That's why the pasuk says, Tishbar Gar. The pasuk speaks about the fact that we are so strong that we could break even the hardest thing. That's what it says. Tishbar, Tav Shin Beis Reish, means that we could break the most indestructible thing. Tishbar, say the Al Pi Kabbalah, it's brought in Sifrei Kabbalah, that Tishbar is the acronym for Tinoikos Shel Beis Rabban, which means the babes. Tinokos means the little children in the academy that study Torah. Tinokos Shel Beis Rabban, that's what could break any edict, any verdict, that's what could break any army. That's what does it. It's when Torah learning happens. And you saw it in the wars of Israel. We were always outnumbered. 1948, 1967, even 1973, certainly 1991. And even today, every single day, the Maral says, Hallelu es Hashem kol goyim, that the nations of the world, it's in Hallel. Hallelu es Hashem kol goyim, the nations of the world are always praising God. Shabchu kol umim, all the people, all the Gentiles, Shabchu, are singing different types of hymns, and they're elating about God. So the Maral says, why? Why are the Goyim singing about God? Why are they always so euphoric about God? What's going on here? He says, because the Goyim know, whether it's ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, whether it's the white supremacists or the black Hebrews, whoever it is, they all know what they're trying to do against us, to perpetrate against us. And they're the ones, though, that know, that end up seeing that it didn't work out. Remember those Jersey City people? Those Jersey City bombers? They had bombs that were the size of, 2 football fields, whatever it was, right? That could have wreaked havoc and destruction. And they knew about it. We only found that afterwards. So just to give you an example. So they know what's going to happen. Shabchu kol umin. That's why they praise Hashem every day, because they know what they're planning. We have no idea what they're planning. We don't even know what we're being spared of. Imagine that. We have no idea. So chamushim means mizuyanin. That's Rashi's first pshat. It means mizuyanin. The Bechor Shor says, Bechor Shor is another Rishon, Rabbi Yosef Bechor Shor. He says mizuyanin actually comes to the word. Chamushim comes to the word chomesh, which, if you look at Egypt, when they had the famine, so it says that Yosef HaTzadik did chomesh in Mitzrayim, that he allocated sustenance in provisions in Mitzrayim, food. So chamushim olu bnei Yisrael Mitzrayim, that when it says that we went out of Mitzrayim with chamushim, it means we left with tzeidol aderech, the provisions for the road. We took food with us. And that's why we didn't need food for a long time into the sojourn in the desert, because we left with food. By the way, that's brought down that Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, whenever we travel, you're always supposed to leave your house with tzeidol aderech. Now, a good Jewish mother knows that she always packs up her kids. Anybody that knows my history knows my famous story about being trapped on a JetBlue flight when I was supposed to go speak once in California. And we were, for 11 hours, just stranded on the tarmac. Never got out of the plane for 11 hours, 11 brutal hours, just sitting there. You never knew, it felt like hostages, right? So it was, but Baruch Hashem, for good Jewish mothers and good Jewish women, they pack a lot of food. So we were the only ones on the plane that had, sufficient food for 11 hours, and we ended up having a food pantry. We were able to give other people food. But that's seidol derech. Some say it's even a halacha that you're supposed to have always travel. When you go out travel, you always have to make sure you have food. There's another halacha that says anytime you travel, always take along your tefillin with you, because if you don't take your tefillin, you make me stranded. You say, well, I'm going on a local trip. So obviously, if you're going within the same city, you don't have to bring along a tefillin. But you're going out of town, even if you plan on coming back that night, so it's actually brought down, they should always travel through a tefillin. So that's another pshat. Mezuyanim means that they left with food, ample food, just in case. Right? The Jew is always, guilty, right? We always have that Jewish guilt. And the Jews are always very cautious, just in case. So therefore...
Against that, he made the manna not able to be sustained more than one day.
That was later on, though. That was later on. For bitachon, that was for faith. Right, that once they got the man, they had to show their faith that they didn't have to worry about machar. They didn't have to worry about the next day. That started with the man. That started with the man. But as long as they were traveling, they needed food for the travels. Very good. Excellent. Now, that's one pshat. There's another pshat that Rashi brings down. Let's see Rashi's other pshat. Rashi says... Davar acher, yet another pshat, says Rashi. Davar acher, when Rashi says davar acher, he means another interpretation. Chamushim, what does it mean? Echad mechamisha yatsu, that only 1 out of 5. Chamushim means only 1/5 escaped the death trap of Egypt, survived. Ve'arba'a chalakim mesu, 4 out of the 5 perished. They died. In the 3 days of darkness, of pervasive darkness. That's Rashi's pshat. Now, the Mechilta and the Tanchuma that Rashi quotes actually says something even more phenomenal than Rashi. That there is a pshat that says that it wasn't 1 out of 5 that escaped, that survived. Rather, it was 1 out of 50. That means that 49 out of 50 died. And there's yet another pshat that says 1 out of 500. That means that 499 out of 500 died. Now that's astronomical sum, if you think about it. It's a staggering number. Why is it a staggering number? Because if 600,000 adults between the ages of 20 and 60 left Egypt, that means according to this pshatim, how many died? Either 30 million or 300 million. If it's 1 out of 50, it's 30 million died. And if it's 1 out of 500, it's 300 million people died. If it's 1 out of 5, it's 3 million people died. Now, wow. That means that there were people in Egypt that didn't have faith. They were Jewish people that acculturated, that assimilated to such a degree that they lost their fealty, they lost their allegiance, they lost their fidelity, but more importantly, they lost their kinship to Judaism. You say, how could that happen? Look at Germany. Germany, which was the epicenter of the Reform movement, which of course ended up being the epicenter of Nazism of Germany. And let's not forget Rameir Simcha Devinsk, the Or Sameach, the Meshech Chachma, who prophesied. He said, those that make Berlin into Jerusalem will end up seeing the destruction of Berlin and of the Jewish people. You know what they said? They said, we don't consider ourselves Jews, these Reformed Jews. They wanted to Christianize themselves. They were the ones that brought the organs into the synagogues, into the shuls, because they wanted to be like churches. They were the ones that said that we no longer consider ourselves people of Jewish descent. We are people of Mosaic persuasion, perhaps. And it was at their rabbinical assembly where they served pork and shrimp and lobster at the ordination of their rabbis. They did the most obscene things. It's one thing to label yourself as non-observant. That's not okay. But okay, they're always observant and non-observant Jews throughout the millennia. But to go ahead and to improvise, to go ahead and to corrupt, to pervert, and say this is Judaism, when it's the most far concept from Judaism, when it's a total distortion of Judaism, when they did things that were so hideous and so immoral to Judaism, that is an anathema. And that's what they did. You want to read more about it, I could send you excerpts from my research that I did about it. This is not fable. This is not mythology. This is ironclad, factual. This is evidence-based, what they did in Germany. They said, we don't identify as Jews anymore. We're not Jews. And it's very, very sad, because if you think about it, as Rabbi Miller points out, in this same place where they Christianized and intermarriage was rampant, where they no longer married Jewish people, you know what happened? The Nuremberg laws, but there were other laws that said that you're not allowed to. The Germans said, we will not marry you. Think about it. Had the Jews only been faithful to their precepts, but somebody came along and reminded them, it was the Germans. Right? You're not allowed to, the Jews that didn't keep Shabbos anymore, you're not allowed to have your stores open on Shabbos. These were laws that were enforced to make them realize you can't escape your Judaism. It's very, very frightening. You see it happen in Egypt, where people said, I have no heart towards Judaism. The Reformed Jews in America refused to help the Jews in Eastern Europe that were facing extinction. Extinction sounds like a harsh, that's what it was. Everybody now is save the whales, save the endangered species, save the lions. There's a whole movement to save the lions. What about save the Jews? Hitler sought to exterminate the Jews. Like rodents are exterminated, Hitler wanted to exterminate, like we were rats. And he almost succeeded. 1 out of every 3 Jews. Hitler believed in Judaism more than we do. He didn't differentiate and discriminate and say, well, he's not Jewish enough. He doesn't wear a black hat on Shabbos. He doesn't go to the right yeshiva. To Hitler, a Jew is a Jew is a Jew. He didn't care. He saw the holiness of the Jew, which unfortunately we don't see, many of us. And the Jewish people in New York, in America,
Wait, who saw?
Hitler.
The what?
Hitler saw the holiness of a Jew. He said, I can't let one Jew, imagine that, I can't let one Jewish kid survive. Because that one Jewish kid will perpetuate the Jewish people. If that one Jewish kid gets a Gemara, gets a Talmud, he called them the, I forgot exactly the terminology, something like the Talmud learners, the Gemara learners. That's one of the first things that he confiscated from the Jewish people were the Gemaras, the Talmud. That's what makes a Jew. It's not the bagels and lox that makes a Jew. It's not visiting museums and cultural institutions that makes a Jew. It's the Gemara, it's the Torah that makes a Jew. And these Egyptians, these Jewish Egyptians, and the Jews in America, I don't know, scoff but say they collaborated with the Nazis. Chas v'shalom to say that. That would be way, way too extreme and exaggerated. But they had an opportunity to appeal to FDR, Stephen S. Wise, of the Wise Synagogue, Temple in Manhattan, the leader of the Reform movement. He said, I don't want the Jews to come into America. It'll make us look like greenhorns. It'll make us look like immigrants. These are our brothers. It'll paint us in a negative light. So who was the one? Who was the one? Who was the one that went on Shabbos in a car, violating Shabbos, from shul to shul to shul? Give me your money. It's muksa. No, it's not muksa. We're saving lives. Rav Kalmanovich of the Mir, the great tzaddikim, the great Gedolim. It was the frum people, it was the religious people that had the sensitivity to their fellow Jews that saved the Jews. These Egyptians, they didn't make it out. These Jews, they weren't Egyptians, they were Jews. But they didn't make it out. They were so assimilated. Scary. But I want to share with you a pshat that is she'en kamoyu. And if I didn't see it from a gadol, I would say, how could he say such a thing? How could anyone say such a thing? You won't believe it. Rav Shimon Schwab, Zatzal, he saw this medrash, and he says, to think that 300 million or 30 million Jews perished in the plague of darkness, it's inconceivable. It's mamish irrational. Why? Because the whole reason why the Jews died, the unfaithful Jews died in the plague of darkness and Makas Choshech. Why did they die during that time? Is that the Jewish people shouldn't be denigrated and degraded and humiliated and ashamed, so that nobody should see, so they should be able to be buried in great haste. So the Egyptians shouldn't notice what's going on. Because even though they were sinners, they still had Jewish neshamas. And they had to be buried. He says, if you had 300 million, if even 30 million people dying, you couldn't bury them all in 3 days. You don't think the Egyptians would get wind of it? You can't. How's it possible? It would counterproductive, would defeat the whole reason of killing them during the plague of darkness. He says such a staggering astronomical number. It doesn't make sense. He says, you know what pshat is? Listen to what he says. And again, if it wasn't said by an Adam Gadol, I would never have the temerity to say it. And you could throw stones at me and oranges and apples at me. I can never say this on my own. Or Schwab said it. A survivor. He got out, remember? He was from Germany. He writes about his memoirs. Kristallnacht, got to read it. They took him out in his pajamas. They tried to. Amazing story. Or Schwab says that it doesn't mean that 30 million, 300 million people died. It means that whoever died, let's say it's 3 million, the 4/5 that died, if you compute, do the math, and think about how many people they would have given birth to. That's what it means. That these people, he references the pasuk about Hevel. When Hevel was killed by his brother Abel, when Cain, when he was killed by his brother Cain, it says the bloods, the bloods of your brother are crying forth from the ground. What does it mean, bloods? You know what it means, bloods? So the Mefarshim say, it means the progeny, those that should have been born from Hevel, that can never be born now. He says, when those people died in Egypt, if they would have lived, there would have been multi-millions of Jews around. And they all were prevented from being born. That's what he says it means. An amazing pshat. Amazing pshat. And you know what? It gives us a lot of introspection, I think. Because if you think about it, If 9 out of 10 Jews in America are assimilating today, it's not 9 out of 10 Jews that are assimilating. It's all the generations that they could have had, but they're being lost. It's a plague of darkness that's happening before our eyes. Even though the Zohar says there will be a 15-day plague of darkness in common Mashiach, maybe, just maybe it means that the world will be so dark and so immoral. Like you have liberalism, immorality that's so rife and rampant that the people will die on their own. And all the generations that should have been born and would have been born and could have been born are never born. 30 million, 300 million, whatever it is. Staggering. But there's yet another pshat. And that's the pshat of the Pardes Yosef and others. Do you know what Chamushim means? Chamushim refers to none other than Chumash. You see, they were leaving Egypt, and they're going through a difficult journey to get into the desert, but they had to have something to hold on to. You see, if you're in a difficult place, but you know there's light at the end of the tunnel, then you could survive. It's when you're in a difficult place, when you have no faith to hold on to, when you have no meaning. They say that the Jews in the Holocaust, that had faith in the beginning, they were the ones that survived. They had purpose. They were able to hold on to something. When I was trapped on that plane for 11 hours, I noticed something very interesting. Everybody was civil. I mean, there weren't all popes on the plane. And, you had all different types of people on the plane, commoners, that could have gone ahead and act very rambunctious and started being very vociferous and, started, really rebelling and taking the pilot and strangling the pilot and, doing who knows what. But they didn't. It bothered me. Why? Why were they so... I have to tell you, it wasn't a simple ordeal. The bathrooms weren't working. The televisions, right? That's a good distraction for most of the people watching television. Not everybody's like me. I had a chumash till, okay, I had my svarim, I was okay, But you have to have a TV, otherwise what are you going to do? You lose your mind. No TV, no bathroom. And JetBlue, they don't serve food, by the way. They just have their blue chips. What is it called? The Bluetooths, blue chips, whatever. It's called blue chips. They ran out of it. So why wasn't there pandemonium? There should have been chaos. Yeah? You know why? Because every hour, the pilot got up there and the pilot said, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to flight," whatever the flight number was, "My name is Mohammed Ibn Abdal, I'm your pilot." No, God, if he said that, I think everybody would be, petrified. He said, "My name is whatever, I'm the pilot of, flight, whatever." He says, "Right now in New York, it is negative 10 degrees. It was freezing, it was an ice storm. It was on February 14th of that year, which was the secular Valentine's Day, by the way. He says, "You're negative 10 degrees in New York. We're going to sunny Los Angeles where it's 72 degrees, And every hour and a half, he would get up there and announce that. Now, it wasn't he was trying to be basically disingenuous. He really thought that they're going to fix whatever the situation, and they're going to go. That's what kept people going. If he didn't announce that, if he got up there in the very beginning of the 11-hour hostage ordeal, it wasn't a real hostage ordeal, and he would have said, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to flight 333 on JetBlue. It's negative 10 degrees in New York, and guess what? You are all going to be trapped for the next 11 hours on this plane, all right?" How many people would still behave for the next 11 hours? You would have people, tearing apart the airplane, I don't know if everybody saw the news the other day where the plane split in half on the runway, right? Terrible. It's very, very frightening, right? Okay? I don't want to scare anybody from flying, but flying is very safe and very dangerous. Okay. Anyhow, so they had something to hold on to. That's chamushim. Olu says the part of the series to say Adam Afarshim. Chamushim means chamishim. So says chamishim. Rabbi Yitzchok told them, "Don't worry, it's difficult, but you have chamishim, the 50th day. The 50th day, you have Matan Torah to look forward to. When I'm going to make you into my beloved people, When I'm going to give you everything, you're going to be cured from any ailment, any infirmity, any disease. You can become my people. You can become the pinnacle, the greatest success in the world. You can become everything. So whatever you're going through, don't worry. Remember the Chumash. You're going to get the Chumash. Remember the Chamishim. You're going to get number 50. You're going to get to 50 a day. Don't worry. Relax. Take it easy. That's a pshat. Okay, let's go a little further. Oz Yashir Moshe. So the Shira, by the way, yeah, Michael?
I'm sorry, what was Ugos's translation again?
Uglos was Zerizim, which means armed or equipped. Yeah. Oz Yashir Moshe. The Jewish people, they experienced the miraculous, they get out, the splitting of the sea. By the way, the Shira, the song that they sing, we say every single day. Not so partial, not so simple. It's machloikas ga'inim. Rav Hai Gon, Rav Natrai Gon, whether it's supposed to be recited daily, or only on Shabbos and Yontif. There were those communities that only said the Shira, because it's not an official part of Pesukei de Zimra. Pesukei de Zimra is, of course, from Baruch She'amar until Yishtabach. Those are hymns. Those are special psalms. Shira, Az Yashir, is not a psalm. It comes from God. It's in the Torah. It comes from Moshe Rabbeinu saying it. So it's a little out of place. Yet, in the time of the Gaon, it was incorporated into the liturgy. And the Mishnah Brura, the Chafetz Chaim says that the Shira is so holy and precious and so important that you have to say it besimcha. Most people, it's so monotonous and so habitual. You go to shul, okay, Yishtabach, okay, Aleinu, let's get out of here, right? I said last night at the Daf Yomi Shir, we spoke about that Shmuel HaKatan, one of the great rabbis. He was the one that made up the prayer against the slanderers. And said he forgot his own prayer for 2-3 hours. He's standing there. I said, like in any shul in Brooklyn, 2-3 hours after 2 minutes of the guy forgetting something, they chuck him out and they throw him out. They say, get another chazan. We don't have any patience. So Az Yashir says in Mishnah Berurah, when you say Az Yashir, you have to feel the elation in the air. You have to feel like the Jewish people you're going through right now a miraculous salvation. You're being delivered from tzara, from misery. And you are now going through dry. The ocean is open. The sea is split. That's what he says. He says, if you do that, all your sins are forgiven. Can you imagine that? It's a great... The Mishnah Berurah, there's not a Makubal talking, although the Chafetz Chaim was a very, very deep Kabbalist. People don't know that about him. He knew everything. He also warned, 1933, I think, that was the year that he died, even a little before. He saw the writing on the wall. He saw that the people were leaving Yiddishkeit in droves. Most people think about Eastern Europe, and this is the way I was taught when I was brought up. It was a lie. Not my parents, other people taught me that, before the Holocaust, all the Jews were so devout and so pious and so righteous. In Poland alone, 2/3, 66% of the Jews totally gave up. There was no Shabbos, nothing. Germany, it was worse than that. Chafetz Chaim saw what was going on. He says, you abandon the covenant abandons you. Why should you be protected? You're a sheep. One sheep among 70 ravenous wolves, 70 rabid wolves. What's to protect you? You have a covenant. You're God's special kikarov because you're close to God. Once you lose that protection, anything, then you're at the whim. You just lost all your protection. So the Shira is very, very, very powerful. Oz Yashir, says the Medrash, that Yashir, then he will sing. The Medrash says that this is so potent that in the time of Mashiach, Moshe Rabbeinu will come back and he will sing about the resurrection. He will see the resurrection of the dead. But Pashup Pshat is Az Yashir. Then, when Moshe Rabbeinu saw the Yeshua, Yashir, it motivated him to sing a song later on. That's some Mefarshim, some Rishonim say. Other Rishonim say Az Yashir is the word Yashir, even though it looks futuristic, there's a Yud, really means Az Yashir. Then Yashir, he sang, as in he sang in the past. It doesn't mean he'll sing in the future. Some machlokas about it, what it exactly means. Okay, but the Shira is very, very powerful. It's so powerful that it was interjected, or basically it was incorporated into the Nusach HaTfilah, even though it wasn't officially part of Pesukei de Zimra, in the time of the Gaonim. because it's so powerful. And it's brought down that if you say shira with kavana, besimcha, it could do amazing things for you. So it's something to really, really consider. And the shira, the song that Moshe Rabbeinu sang. Now listen very carefully. It says in the shira, Tivlo'emo oretz. What does that mean, Tivlo'emo oretz? The earth swallowed them. Who's this referring to? Who did the earth swallow? The earth swallowed the Egyptians. Now, the Egyptians were terrible people. They were evil. But yet, the Mefarshim say that you know what happened? You look right here. Mikan, says Rashi, shezachu l'kvura, they merited burial. Why? Why did the Egyptians merit burial? Let them be cremated. Let them turn into ashes. Let them disintegrate. Water could do that. Water could pulverize. Says Rashi, because of the plague of hail, of Barad, they said, Hashem HaTzadik, that God is a tzaddik. Those two words, Hashem HaTzadik, gave them the schus that they should be buried. I think Tosfos and others say that the reason why they were merited to be buried is not because they said Hashem HaTzadik, a different reason. Because they participated in the burial of Yaakov Avinu. When Jacob died, who buried him? The Jewish people, but the Egyptians all accompanied and went there. And because they helped bury Yaakov, because they participated in the burial of Yaakov, therefore they merited to be buried. You know what the lesson is? The lesson is, all it takes is two words, or involving yourself in a mitzvah. And you never know what the rewards are. The person could be the epitome of evil. The Egyptians were so evil. And yet, look, because they said Hashem HaTzadik, or because they participated in a mitzvah of burial, a chesed shalemis, they were zocheh to burial themselves. And I want to tell you, especially in today's day and age, do not relinquish, do not give up the opportunity for a chesed. Run to do chasadim. Be avas chesed. Be somebody who loves kindness. Anytime you have an opportunity to give a helping hand for whatever it is, do it. You never know what the rewards could be. May we all be zocheh bez Hashem, with the help of Hashem, that chamushim alu mi hagolus, that we should ascend, that we should be liberated from our golus, chamushim as well. Yeshkoch, everybody, thank you for listening, thank you for coming. Anybody have any questions or comments? As long as the comments are not too critical,